Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Osseo gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Osseo's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Osseo. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. Mobile hunters, our buddies over at Tethered are always innovating to keep us more mobile and in the game when it counts. From the Tethered One Sticks, the Fast Pack, to the Ultra Lock saddle, Tethered is always designing to increase comfort and utility while reducing bulk, weight, and fiddle factor of mobile hunting gear. And now, they've outdone themselves yet again by creating the carbon fiber forged Predator CFX platform, the latest fully featured mobile saddle platform that raises the bar for what's possible in mobile hunting gear. Whether you're new to saddle hunting or an old tree climbing veteran, go to tetherednation.com for all your saddle hunting gear. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. And today I have a fella on who came, if anyone listened to the episode with my buddy Jacob Sklenner, we were kind of chatting about guys that we know that like to get after it, and folks that might be a good person to have on the show that kind of fits the mold of like the people who listen to the show. And he brought up this gentleman's name, Mr. Cody Schleich, and I said your last name right. How about that?
That's rare for most people. Yeah.
Yeah. Not going to lie. It was only because like you told me exactly what the pronunciation was before. Yeah. How you been, man? You good? How's your spring going?
It's going well. I actually was in Kentucky this morning, turkey hunting. So last couple of days I've been down there and chasing some birds around, getting my butt kicked, and got home, mowed the grass today, get caught up, and hopped on here with you.
Nice. So how were the birds talking? I was seeing some buddies of mine that were down that were in Kentucky having some luck.
Yeah, I heard several birds, just nothing that I could really work with.
Yeah.
I chased a couple around the day, and I think when I moved on them, I spooked them, so they got quiet on me and never really amounted to anything. But it was a good time anyhow. Put in some miles around the hills down there. Yep.
Nice. And then your turkey season in Ohio comes in. Is it this week?
Yeah, Saturday. This Saturday, I believe, is the 19th, maybe.
Nice. I think the youth's open now, right? If I'm not mistaken.
This past weekend was youth season.
This past weekend?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, I was talking to my buddy Chad because I know he was all geeked up to get ready to go out. My turkey hunting usually lasts all of about an hour on the first day. That's about the extent of my turkey hunting. I go out and I usually so this is how it happened last year. I was at a place I like to hunt, an area that I've scouted for like deer the past couple years. It's like a big woods piece I've been learning. And I truck camped in an area that I kind of wanted to hunt near. And I woke up and I was making some coffee on the tailgate, and I heard a bird kick off, and I was like, oh man, that's awesome. Because I didn't get there in time that the evening before to roost anything. And so I was like, man, how lucky is that? I was like, I got a bird roosted here, and so kind of made a loop around to try to get to where he was at. And he gobbled like two times on the limb and then never made another peep. And so the route I was kind of taking, it was like, oh, I'm going to walk by like a trail camera I had hung. I was like, so I'll check that on my way. Checked that. There was some really good deer on it. And I was like, oh, well, there's another one up here a little further. I was like, I'll just kind of make a loop and see if I can't relocate that bird, and got almost to that camera and found a shed, and then a really big deer on the camera the second camera that I checked, and that was the end of my turkey season. It was full on into deer season then.
Right. Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, I absolutely love to turkey hunt, but it doesn't get me fired up like deer do. That's for sure.
Yeah. I like to use it as just I don't know. For me, it's like I'll walk into places that maybe I wouldn't walk into deer scout sometimes, when I'm turkey hunting, because I feel like whenever I'm scouting for deer, it's like I've done my map work and stuff like that. And so I'm just kind of focused and I'm beeline into certain spots that I want to check. And I feel like when I'm turkey hunting, go ahead.
Yeah. So I apologize, but I found several spots that I deer hunt now just from chasing turkeys around and ending up in random areas and start scouting around, and they actually end up being really good deer areas. So definitely get my scouting in during turkey season.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes maybe I even scout a little bit better because I don't have the I don't want to say stress because it's all fun, but like the the focus of like, I'm trying to find something or I'm trying to find a puzzle piece or whatever. And so I think sometimes when you do that, you kind of miss the forest through the trees a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel like when I'm turkey hunting, because I'm not so focused on looking for a particular deer sign or a puzzle piece for a particular deer, I'm almost kind of just deer hunting or deer scouting and not for a specific buck, if you will, you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it a little easier. But, yeah, so my season, I think my season kicks off on the 27th of April. So I'm looking
Okay.
forward to
Where you at?
Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah, eastern side of PA, so
Okay.
close to Philadelphia area.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll my plan I think is I'm kicking it around. This just sounds stupid, but I've contemplated like actually going out but not even taking my gun because I want to take my dog.
Okay.
You know,
To
it's like
find sheds.
yeah. I
Yeah.
want to take my dog, and I got to travel, and I just have my little travel trailer that I built, and it's not big enough for me to like let him in there for a couple hours in the morning by himself, without him going berserk. And
Right.
I want to take him along, and I'm like, the chances of me actually killing a bird in the morning probably aren't real good anyway. I was like, and we can only hunt till noon, like the first 2 weeks, I think,
Okay. Yeah, that's how it is
here
here
in
in
PA.
Ohio as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was like, I might be better served just taking the dog along with me and making it a deer scouting mission,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's the
I
plan.
don't blame you.
Yeah, a little time with the pooch, man. It's therapeutic, man. I love being in the woods with the dog.
Yeah. I have a Labrador, and I've tried to work with him, and I've had him out in the woods several times, and he just seems to walk right over top of the shed and not even pay attention. So he's
That's
getting older
awesome.
now, though, so I try to keep him out of the woods, especially when it warms up, because
Yeah.
snakes and that sort of thing. Ran into some rattlesnakes out there, and I was like, I don't want to get my dog bit out here. So when it's
I'm
warmer out,
the,
I usually leave him at home.
yeah, I'm the same way. That's usually why in the winter I try to get him out, or the place the big woods piece is kind of north, and so it stays a little colder a little longer, so you get out turkey season, especially in the mornings or whatever, that time of year. It's still going to be in the 30s at night, maybe 50s during the day of a high. So snakes are still kind of kind of away, but it's the same for me. It's like once it gets warm, he's not super old. He's going to turn 7 this week, I think. But same thing. It's like I don't want him to get bit. I'd feel terrible. You know what I mean? It's like I got snake boots on when I go out there in the summer because I know there's rattlers around and stuff like that. But he's just curious too.
Yeah, yeah, they
Yeah.
are. So yeah,
He sees he sees a snake in the yard and he wants to play with it.
yeah, yeah, and I can't carry him out of the woods. So it's you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah, there's a lot of truth to that too, man. He's found himself one shed. I don't claim him to be a good shed dog. Like he knows what they are. We play with him in the backyard. He'll find them up, or I'll take him somewhere and toss him in some brush, and he'll find them. And but he's found only one shed in his life, and
Yeah,
I let him keep that one. He still carries it around pretty much every day. And I'm like, buddy, you need to find a couple more, dude. Let's let's replace this old beat up shed with some new ones.
yeah. I had
But
big plans when I got mine, and he just doesn't have the temperament. So he's just a house dog now.
yeah,
I named him after Daniel Boone. I named him Boone. So
yeah.
he didn't turn out to be no Daniel Boone, that's for sure.
Nice, nice. Awesome, man. Well, before we jump into deer hunting and stuff like that, man, before we, kind of kick off on all the juicy stuff, if you wouldn't mind, let folks out there know, where you're from and what you do for a living so they have a little bit of background about, the areas that we might be talking about, or at least like the state and stuff like that we're talking about.
Okay, yeah, so I live in South Central Ohio. I'm about 30 miles south of Columbus, which is our capital city here, kind of in the center of the state. I hunt all over. I mean, anywhere within about an hour and a half of my house going south. So I hunt all hill country stuff. So everything south within an hour and a half. I've probably had boots on the ground on at one point in time. Um, I run a small landscape business um, for myself, and then I've also been helping a buddy out with his construction business, doing some like finished carpentry and that sort of thing. So kind of pulling double duty this year right now, work wise, and it's got me a little behind in the woods this spring. But it's just the way it goes. So I'll get caught back up sooner or later.
That's it, man. it never feels like there's enough time. Even in the years that I've had plenty of time and spent as much time as I wanted to in the woods, I always kind of at the end of the year, at the end of we'll just say postseason scouting time frame or whatever, because I don't do a whole lot during the summer. I'm pretty honest with myself. I hate being in the woods in the summer. I don't like the ticks. I don't like the bugs. Like, I'll check some cameras once in a while, but I try to just get as much done as I can before it warms up. Partially what we were talking about earlier. Not only do I want my dog not to get bit by a snake. Like, snakes are the one thing that I just don't mess with. Like, I just don't like them.
Right. Yeah,
if I can avoid like the areas they want to be in entirely, like when they want to be there, it's like they can have it as long as I can have it in the fall.
Yeah, exactly. I don't like them either.
Yeah. So as far as, how you started hunting, because we were just talking about turkey hunting, obviously you're, big into deer hunting and stuff like that. You put a lot of time in, and you came from, a recommendation from Jacob. And I know you're buddies with Jake Bush, and he has a very, particular approach, and he's a guy who likes to get after it. And so does Jacob. And so before I even, I started talking to Jacob a little bit about you or whatever, I was kind of immediately was like, well, this guy is a dude who likes to get after it, right? This is like a grinder. But before we kind of dive into all of that, like, how did you start hunting? Like, did you come from a hunting family? Is this something you picked up later on your own, or, how'd you get into it?
Yeah, I was born into it, basically. My dad was a hunter, and he had me out in the woods all the time growing up, and as well as my grandpa on my mom's side of the family. So my mom's dad, he was a big outdoorsman as well. So between those two, I was just in the woods all the time, whether it be hunting or fishing. They weren't huge deer hunters. Mostly, shotgun season, they would go out and deer hunt, but small game hunting was a lot more popular back then with them. Deer hunting wasn't as prevalent with them growing up as it is now. So, but they exposed me to the outdoors, and then I took to deer hunting and kind of went all in with it.
So what was it about deer hunting that kind of just like tripped your trigger?
I think it's just the there's something about deer. It's different than small game where there's more of a strategy to it. There's you kind of have to beat their brains, so to speak. Where it's not like just walking around the woods, kicking something up and taking a shot at it. It's more of a chess match than, a checkers, I guess.
Right. So did you start, so me growing up in PA, it was the same for me, like, hunting family, dad wasn't a big bow hunter. And I've mentioned this 1,000 times, but, we would always go out during rifle season. He would carry a recurve once in a while whenever it was windy in the fall, in October, if he could stalk something. That was kind of how he liked to bow hunt. He didn't like to bow hunt like in a stand and just kind of wait,
Right.
So I didn't really do any bow hunting until I was older, just because I wasn't really exposed to it. But once I was like, good God, like it's all I want to do. You know what I mean? It was just the intimacy, being close, the strategy. And so, like, did you start out gun hunting as well? And like, if you did, like, when did you kind of make that transition to where you wanted to kind of focus more on bow hunting?
So I think my first year deer hunting, I was 10 years old, and it was shotgun season. So I hunted a couple seasons with a shotgun, and then I ended up, I think around 12 or 13, I ended up, getting a crossbow, an old Horton crossbow, and my dad kind of turned me loose at that time, and I've already killed a couple deer by then. He kind of just sent me out, and, he's like, you can do it on your own. So he would take me out, he'd go his way, I'd go mine, and I just kind of had to figure things out as I went. I think I got a compound when I was 15 and started hunting with a compound then. We had a lease from Mead. I don't know if you're familiar with Mead, or they're a paper company. So I had a Mead lease, bunch of guys on it and stuff, growing up through high school, and I would hunt that all the time, and I killed several deer off of it with my bow, and ever since then I've pretty much just been hunting public once we lost that lease, and I really like the public land stuff. I mean, it gives me the opportunity to be in the woods as much as I want to be. I'm the type of guy that I have to be out there almost every week of the year. If I'm not, I feel way behind. I know it's probably not necessary for me to be successful to be out there that much, but Um, it's just what I love to do. So if I can get out
Yeah.
and, you know, even in the summertime, like you said, I hate the summer scouting as much as you do, but I feel like I have to be there. There's, I got to look over the next ridge or the next piece of property. I'm always thinking, the grass is greener on the other side. So, um, I'm just always out there trying to find something or I haven't found yet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear that. It's especially whenever, I don't know about you, but especially if there's an area it's kind of new to me. And I won't say that I'm odd this way, but I don't often hunt the same areas like year over year, you know. And I'm not even talking about the same spots. Like I have like the past couple years because there was this particular spot that was just I was having encounters with really good deer or the deer that I wanted to kill, and I was just getting beat. And so it took me like 3 seasons to figure out like why I keep getting beat. Finally killed a deer in that spot this year. So now it's like, all right, I'm moving on. Right. But even that spot, it's very time specific. There's like a 4-day window that spot's really good or that,
Right.
and then that's about it. Right. And it just really intrigued me. Part of it was because I had to use a boat and I wanted to kayak a buck out. That was my whole, I was like, I'm putting up deer in this kayak. It was like, that's all there is to it. I'm going to kill it, in this general area. And I kept going back because I kept getting opportunities and just something wouldn't go right. But generally speaking, even when I travel out of state, it's like I'll hunt a parcel and maybe I kill a deer on that parcel, maybe I don't. And then the next time I go back, it's even though I have intel on that spot, like a lot of times I'll just go to a different area. Just because it's like whenever I just want to see what else is there,
Yeah.
like there's, people say it's like I'm nuts because like a good example is like this place I killed the deer at in Kansas this year. I won't say I haven't figured out, but I have a good idea of like what goes on that piece. And that's why I was successful this year. And so after I did that, I drove a couple hours from where I was at to scout a new piece that I kind of learned of. And a buddy of mine was like, dude, you've had encounters with like Boone and Crockett deer 2 years in a row on that piece and you killed one of them. Like, why would you ever leave? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like this other piece just looks really cool. I was like, I can't tell you why.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are you kind of the same way? Like, is it, once you kind of learn a spot and you've hunted it for a little while, regardless of whether you were successful or not, are you kind of like itching to kind of look and find new, explore new areas?
Yeah, I would say somewhat. I tend to go back in the fall to the areas I tend to hunt the same areas quite a bit. But scouting, I'm always wanting to check something new out, and I might run some cameras for intel on some of the new stuff I scouted. But as far as like I have core areas that I like to hunt in, they seem to always have the best bucks in them, so I tend to go back to them a lot. But if I do pick up a big, a nice buck on another piece, something I'm interested in chasing, I will go hunt that piece. I mean, I'm not glued to one spot, but I just have, I have confidence in certain areas for hunting them for several years.
Right. So when you say core areas that you'll tend to kind of go back to or whatever, is there any, well, I guess let me back up for a second. Let's start with this first so people have like a sense of like, what type of areas you're hunting. So give me an idea of, as far as like topography, habitat and things like that of the areas that you're hunting.
So it's big woods, no agriculture. Most of the stuff I hunt. There are some areas where there are some ag fields out on private, down in the lower elevations, but all the public is big woods, anywhere from 800 to 1,200 feet elevation. Somewhere in that area. Just a lot of oaks, a lot of mash trees, a lot of oaks, greenbrier. I tend to, key in on cutovers and clear cuts and that sort of thing quite a bit. Hub systems, but it's pretty typical eastern United States hill country. I mean, it's
right. Yeah. Nice. The man, oak trees. I wish you could just like give me one or two to put on this big woods piece that I've been kind of scouting and hunting the past couple of years. Cause there's one area that I found that is just loaded with oaks. I mean, on roller skates. and it's the only area of all the places that I've walked that I've found like what I would say is a reasonable amount of oak trees that would amount to anything,
Right.
like I've found like one or two red oaks here and there, but to find a white oak in that area is like finding a needle in a haystack. If you can, like you've hit a gold mine, but just in all the walking that I've done, I've not walked across very many of them. And if you do, they seem to be in just like really oddball places where you're like, deer, I have no clue where the deer would be in relationship to this. Cause it's almost like the way I kind of explain it to people is it'd be like if you went to like maybe like the Adirondacks. Like there's some places you walk into, it looks like Canada. Like that's like just big poplar trees and
Right.
birch and stuff. You know what I mean? And it's just some areas you could throw a baseball, I could like grab a baseball and play catch. It's that open, and then, but it's got a lot of elevation, but you're already kind of on top of the mountain to a degree. So it's a lot of flat, but when you do get elevation, it's like sheer, it's like, I think the highest point I want to say is like 2,400 feet or something like that, And so, but I'm like, man, if I could ever just find like a white oak in an area where there's deer sign, like, I almost feel like I'd be fishing a barrel at that point.
Yeah. If they're that rare, you would think that if that oak tree's producing, then it would be a pretty good like destination food source in the area. You just have to backtrack and find where the deer are coming from to get to it, I guess.
Yeah, and they bed in the weirdest places. Like it's so open. Like you'll find a bed that just you'll stop and you'll look at it and be like, why would a deer ever bed here?
Right.
Like it's like they just lay down, and I've seen this somewhat in like one of the big pieces I hunted in Southern Ohio where it was just so vast and they have so much room to roam that they literally, like, I would find beds in the most random places,
Yeah. And I was actually about to bring that up. I find a lot of deer bedding in big open timber in the hills. I think the hills are kind of their security cover sometimes, and the deer that do that are pretty hard to hunt. They're tough to get close to. They're tough to access. So I usually try to find something that I can work with or get to. But those deer that bed in the open timber, they're tough to kill.
Yeah. So what's like when you have a deer like that, right? Like what are you looking for to be the chink in his armor to a degree? Like what is something that tells you, because one thing is finding the deer, right? We always talk about finding the deer, like, and the guys, at least what I've kind of, running the show for as long as I have, like the guys that kill the deer is like, they recognize when he's actually killable, right? And they don't spend a lot of time hunting ghosts, right? Because you meet a lot of guys who will get a couple pictures of a big deer and they get enamored with it, but the deer is not giving you any sign, like on the ground or via a video or a photo, that suggests he's even killable, And so what do you look for with those deer that are like super hard to kill, right? But what's that little kind of chink in the armor where you're like, yeah, I can exploit that.
I'm looking for I'm trying to figure out his exits. Okay, so his exits from his bed to whatever food source he may be hitting, whether it be white oaks or red oaks or chestnut oaks in the late season are pretty popular. But if he is bedded in open timber like that, you're going to have to find some sort of ditch or something to stay out of sight, to get up, or maybe funnels him down. He's got to cross to get to his food source. Or maybe he's hopping over, maybe he's heading up high and hopping over the backside of the ridge to feed too. So you might, if you can figure that out and you can slip up the backside and catch him coming over the top. I've had luck doing that before as well. So you just got to figure out a way to stay out of sight,
Yeah. Yeah. It's, man, when they bed in those off the wall places, I had one deer in this particular piece that I had watched for like 2 years, and the first year, it was the first year I ever scouted the place. I knew I didn't have a chance to kill him because I didn't really know much about the place in general. And so the second year I still knew less, or I still didn't know a whole lot, but I watched this deer for 2 years. Like I had him in the summer, had him in the fall, had him in late season, and then the second year I had him summer again, fall, and so I kind of had an idea. I was like, I think he's doing this, right? And I had him in a couple different cameras. So I was like starting to piece together how he was kind of like at the different times of year, how he would start to spend more time in a particular area and less time in, basically just how his pattern was working. And he was also kind of aggressive. Like I've watched him run deer on video mode on like community scrapes, run other deer off, and he would be like one of the few deer that would actually like tear up the licking branch and stuff like that. And so I found some rubs that were really kind of aggressive, where it was like, they weren't huge, but they were just like, almost like brow tine gouge marks. And there was a scrape line that opened up, and he was one of the few deer that I would have on camera that would open scrapes. And I had him on camera in that area like the year before. And I was like, man, I think he's in this area, but it was early. It was like, I don't know. I want to say probably like around somewhere between the 15th and 18th of like October, something like that. And, I thought it was close to cut, and I was like, I bet he's bedded on the edge of this cut. And so I set up off of it, maybe 100 yards ish, 150 yards ish. Right. I didn't want to get too close if he was on the edge of that cut, because there's a natural place where they want to cross to go to this like swamp area. And I knew there's a bunch of does back there. So I was like, I bet he's starting to make his loop just to kind of check his areas, and he should slip through here. And so went in, the next day in the morning, climbed a tree. I got halfway up the tree and heard a buck jump up out of a bed 40 yards from me and just antlers crashing through the brush. Cause there was like, right below this bench, there was like a bunch of brush, and then like toward the clear cut or whatever. Yeah. And it got real high stem count there before it got to the cut. And, I would have never in a million years thought that deer was bedded there. Right. Cause it was there where he was at, there was nothing, you know what I mean? Like it was as open as it could be. I mean, it was on a side hill, and I came up on this bench, and I got into the tree before I kind of got to where he was at. And so he just heard me climb into the tree, and that was it.
And when I come back into my areas, in the winter, early spring, wintertime to scout, I always find little nooks and crannies where they were hiding, eluding me. It's amazing. It seems to happen every year. Even if I've been hunting the area for several years, I'll always find something, where a buck was hiding that I didn't know about any previous year. If I go back in the wintertime and scout, so. Yeah.
What I figured out, because, once I sat there for a little bit, disappointed, because I was like, think my day is pretty much over right at that point. And, let the sun come up, and I was getting down, or not let the sun come up, but just kind of like, I was like, I'm almost set up. I was like, I'm just going to set up, and I'm going to sit here for like an hour or two, and maybe something walks through. And then eventually got down and was walking out. And I was like, well, I'm going to walk down through where he was at. And as I walked down through there was a handful of old logging roads that didn't have an entrance from like one side. They obviously were coming from the cut to that area. And it must have been logged like years ago, because it was all grown up. And they were just like these little benches, and there was like 3 of them like right down below me that I didn't know were there. Yeah. And once I saw that, I was like, oh, well, okay. Yeah. I was like, this is like a perfect spot for him to bed in the open. He's got these little benches, a little bit of back cover if he's up against the edge of it or whatever, but it's just one of those things like you're saying. It's like, I never had walked down through that area, there was really never any reason to, until like he bedded down there. And then it was like, okay, well, how did I get beat?
Sounds pretty similar to what we have here. I mean, I don't know. We're about 2 or 3 flats to the top of the hill here most of the time. So it's usually that upper flat or bench that I'm looking for bedding on. It's not always there, but sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. But it seems most of the time it's on that first flat down is where the bedding is. Yeah.
And that's where he was at. I was on the one that was up above him. It was the last one, right? And then before that, still a little bit of a climb to crest to get to the top to where like the swamp is on the top and stuff like that. But that would have been like the flat to be on would have been that, because the benches right below were actually really, really close together. Like, because they weren't really even benches. They were just old petered out logging roads, essentially is what they were, and they were really, really close together. And so I was like, well, he could be bedding on any one of these, you know what I mean? I was like, because they're so close together, they might as well be a bench, or might as well be a single bench. And it wasn't anything you could see on the map. Like it wasn't, anything that you would see e-scouting. It would just, you would have to stumble across it essentially, but chalk that up to a learning experience. So now what I've learned is that there's a lot of petered out logging roads in this area. And actually a big deer that I had on, that I'm focused on this year, like that's where I found him, because I found an old petered out logging road, and I was like remembering back, and I was like, wait a minute, this happened to me before. Let's pay attention to this.
Yeah,
but
I'll have to pay attention, because we have a lot of those, especially some of the older cuts and stuff here. It's they're just little tiny, maybe 5 yards across, just where they pushed a skidder down through there and dozed it out, 40 years ago or something.
Yeah, I hung a camera in an area on a whim this past year. And it was a logging road, kind of started, off this like big access road, what they've clearly used to bring big machinery in throughout the years or whatever. And I just kind of noticed this, little offshoot, on the map. And I was like, oh, maybe that's worth checking out, so I ended up walking part of it. And it was like, oh, this kind of goes down further. And I didn't see that on the map. And I was like, oh, and it actually dumps down into a swamp and just ends. And when I got down there, I was like, I kind of just noticed this bank that it was just kind of ruffled up. It wasn't like divoted out or anything like that, where it was like, oh man, it's a goat path of deer just coming up over. You don't get that in this area because it's so big and open, where deer trails there's just not a lot of deer trails. But it was enough to see like the ground scuffed. And I was like, man, I got a camera in my bag. I'm just going to throw one here and see, and sure enough, all kinds of deer on it. I think when I set that camera, I want to say it was one of the last ones I hung, because it was just on a whim. I was up there, I think in like beginning of June. Actually, it was May, I think. And when I went and pulled it in October, the first time I hunted in that general area, I think I had like 700 pictures on it in the big woods. Like that's
that's a lot. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And now it wasn't like 700 different deer. Of course, it was a bunch of does in October, or a bunch of does all through the summer, a bunch of velvet bucks coming through, but it was like a travel route. Like they were going back and forth. And I want to say there wasn't more than maybe 2 days in that entire stretch of time that I didn't have pictures of a deer on it, and so kind of filed that away. And then, one that's got me a little shook up ended up showing up on that one too. So, which is always good, man. But, speaking of kind of, getting shook up, whenever you do find these deer that, maybe hard to hunt or whatever, how are you approaching it? Like, I'm always curious, especially whenever I get to meet other guys who like to hunt the big woods and just areas that don't have ag around that are hard to hunt, how they kind of balance or what their hunting style is really, like whether they're aggressive, whether they're patient. Cause it's just, I don't know. I feel like the big woods, I think if you're patient, you're sometimes not in the game at all, or you're never going to be in the game. But on the flip side, I sometimes feel like when you're aggressive in those scenarios, you often only get one chance, right? At a deer in those areas, and it could be, who knows how long until you locate another, like one that you want to go after. So I'm just curious how you kind of approach that and what your hunting style looks like.
I'm I would call myself extremely aggressive. I have no patience. That's, when November rolls around in the rut, like I go crazy, because I can't sit there all day. I feel like I've got to be seeing deer all the time, and plus when the rut comes in, I seem to lose track of a lot of my bucks. So, and I don't know really how to target a specific deer during the rut very well. So, I'm extremely aggressive from opening day all the way through October. Stylistically, probably very similar to the way, Jake Bush hunts, targeting specific beds and destination food sources and that sort of thing, and thermal hubs a lot of times. But I get, if I try to find, I try to find all the bedding areas so that I think the buck I'm hunting might be using, because there's tons of bedding opportunity in the hill country, and it's not very often that they use the same bed all the time. So, a big key for me is scouting, before I hunt, kind of working through and looking at these bedding areas, maybe checking sign coming out of them. It's, for opening week of season, like I want to be in there, 4 or 5 days before the season and scouting the food sources, seeing which one they're hitting. Well, if they're hitting this food source, he's probably in this bed over here, and he's coming down this hill and across this trail to get to this food source. So I'm pushing in, trying to get within 100 yards of them most of the time, and hoping based off of sign, tracks, open scrapes, fresh rubs, whatever, that I'm picking the right bed. So, yeah, I'm aggressive. I'm sure I know I mess it up a lot, and if you do, it's not that big a deal. I usually can relocate them. A lot of times they'll be back in the same area fairly quickly, and sometimes they might go a mile and a half to another bedding area they have there. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game, but I'm not afraid to risk it, and I just want to be in the game every time I'm out there in the woods.
Right. So when you say bedding area, right? Because I think a lot of people, when they think of beds, they think like a singular bed, but it sounds to me like there's like an area that a deer might be bedded in, right? And he might have a couple beds in it that he might use, right? So I'm curious, like, how consistently do you find them using a bedding area? Like, do you see it shift, like almost, for lack of a better way to say it, daily, or do you see it more so shift what I'll call like seasonally, where they're shifting because of like the food's changed, or they're ramping up in testosterone because, the late October's coming in, or whatever the case is? Like, how consistent are they in those bedding areas, and what kind of moves them, if you will, most frequently?
It kind of varies, honestly. Depends on the food sources nearby. What else was I going to say? Some bedding areas seem to bed there the entire season. And then there's some bedding areas that are really hot for 3 or 4 days, and then he may never be back in there again. So, it's tough because there's so much bedding opportunity in the hills. They can almost bed wherever they want. Of course, I would say 80 to 90% is wind based. So they're usually going to bed on the leeward side. I know that's kind of regurgitated, and everybody knows that, but it's just the way it is. I'm not saying that it is all the time, but it's usually wind based. So if I'm hunting in a thermal hub, so to speak, and the wind's coming out of the northwest, and he's probably bedded up here on this southeast point or southeast bowl, or wherever the bedding is up there. So I don't know. It's just tough, man. They're so random, it seems like at times, but then if I find a really good like cutover, real good security cover, and the bucks are using it, they'll bet it. They seem to bet in that the entire season.
Yeah. It's funny, like when you said that they seem so random at times. It's like my immediate thought was, they all, like, to me, they all seem super random. Like the bedding, where they bed, it just, even what they do to a degree, until it doesn't any longer. Right. Like, and that's usually what happens. It's like, it seems completely random until all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this isn't random anymore. And that's usually when you kill it.
But
you know what I mean? But
yeah, it is. And it's, it's my opinion that, like, you have to take a shot. You know what I mean? You have to be confident based off your scouting that he's in this bedding area. Otherwise, if you're just hunting, some random travel corridor the first week of October, your chances of killing a buck are almost zero,
Yeah.
Especially a specific buck, or a mature buck. So you got to scout and hope you make the right choice. And, if you don't, try again, but you got to try to put yourself in the game. Otherwise you're pretty much wasting your time,
Yeah. Do you find the more mature the deer is, the more consistent they are, as far as they, I'm trying to figure out how to say this that'll make sense, that that they're more homebodies, I guess
Yeah,
is one way to say it.
definitely. They tend to be pretty confident in the areas that they're in. So, um, they might shift around that area a little bit based off the pressure, but they're still going to stay in that comfort zone of theirs. Um, I was hunting a buck this year that I'm not sure how old. He's a good 6, 7 year old buck, and I went in and scouted this drainage. I found a bunch of sign. I was really excited about it. Threw some cameras up. A lot of big sign, broken down branches and stuff, pulled out of trees, and
Mm.
I was excited about it. So I threw some cameras up and got out of there. I think that was the first week of October, and then I actually got a call from Jake Bush, and he was hunting like the north side of the road, and I was hunting the south, and he told me he jumped this big buck, and he said, "Hey, ran across the road down there on your side of the road where you're hunting." I said, "All right." Well, I said, "Well, if he stays over there, I'll figure out where he's at." So I went back in where I hung the cameras like a week later, and he was on my camera, the same buck that Jake told me he jumped. So, but he was on my camera the same week I hung the cameras. So, when I was in there scouting, I think I bumped that deer out of that area, and where Jake jumped him was I think at 1.4 miles in a straight line. So I kind of, we kind of talked for a minute, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go up here, like kind of in between us and scout. And I ended up finding some really good sign up there, kind of in the middle ground there. And it was right next to the road, next to a nice cut. I started working up the point, and there's a nice little flat there and a bowl, and I found a really big bed with a tree rubbed up in it. So I worked on up the hill, and there wasn't a ton of buck sign going up the hill, but I found some tine marks and trees that were, chest height or so. Okay. You still with me?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry,
Okay, we got disconnected.
Sometimes my internet just decides it's going to change like which Wi-Fi it's connected to randomly. Sometimes, but we're good.
Yeah, but anyhow, I was scouting that middle ground. I found a good bed down on a flat about 2/3 of the way up the hill, and it was off the edge of a cut, but it was bedding into bigger timber. And I followed a trail up out of that bed to the top, and I found a few, like, not aggressive rubs going up the hill, but they were really high up in the tree. So I knew there was a good chance it was him, because in that area I didn't have a ton of real big deer. I had some nice bucks, 3, 4-year-old bucks in the area, but I never had a lot of, like, really big. I mean, this buck was probably 170 inches. So I found those rubs, and they were just like tine marks, chest high in the tree or whatever. And then they led up to the top of the ridge. There was white oaks dropping, and the leaves were just raked off the ground from the deer feeding on them white oaks. So I kind of figured that might be him. I threw a camera up, and then I went back in. I don't know, the next chance opportunity I had, which was probably 6 or 7 days later when I had the right wind to get in there. And I ended up, I think it was October 23rd, and I ended up shooting him. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to recover him. I'm not sure where I hit him, but I think I might have got guts, and I never did find him. So,
man,
I'd hate to open that wound back up, but
I was going to say that's good on you for telling that story, man, because that's a tough one there, dude.
So yeah, that kind of took the wind out of my sails for the season right there.
I bet, man.
Yep.
Well, the one thing that struck me there, man, was a couple things. One was just, being able to kind of pick him up, locate him, and just the discipline to stay out for 6 or 7 days to wait till you had the right wind.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think a lot of guys, when they find a big deer, get all rammy, and that's like, because you said earlier, like you teeter on like I'm super aggressive. And some people mistake that for, I just let her rip, right? But like you're being aggressive with like the odds. I won't say the odds, but with as many elements as you can get stacked in your favor, most specifically the wind, like the fundamentals that like as a deer hunter, like we need to do to even just put ourselves in the game consistently.
And I mean, that was a little unique. I find a lot of high to low feeding patterns, or bed to feed patterns. So bedding high, coming down low to feed. So this one was the opposite. He was bedding and then moving up the hill to feed, which makes it really tough for an evening hunt, with your
thermals and
stuff. So I had to get like just an angle, the wind was probably, 15 degrees off of where he was bedded from where I was set up. So I had to just, almost give him the wind, but it was just missing him as he got up and came up the hill. So unless you can, pop up and sit on the backside of a ridge or something, that low to high feeding bed to feed pattern is really tough in hill country in the evening time.
Yeah. Yeah. The, just you mentioning kind of almost giving him the wind like so many times, man, like when you hear, guys killing really good mature bucks or being on really good mature bucks and having those encounters and stuff like that, like it's always giving them the win. Like you're almost always busted. Yeah. It's like you're sitting there. I know at least for me, you have those hunts where you're, you're in the game and you're in the right spot, but in the back of your mind going, man, I get one squirrely wind at the wrong time.
Right.
It game's over. You know what I mean?
I mean, in hill country, it's kind of a crapshoot anyhow. It's like I was just actually talking to Jake about this a couple of weeks ago. I was like, I've never one time been set up in a tree stand and be like, man, this wind is good. This is a great wind for me. It's never happened.
Yeah. No, 100%, man. It always feels like, unless you get like, well, even in hill country, man, when you're in the, in the terrain and stuff like that, like you just don't get a consistent wind, even if you have a stiff wind, right? Because like there are some places that you can hunt that, you get a stiff wind and it kind of takes care of, you can cheat the thermal a little bit, maybe if you have the wind direction stiff enough in the right, prevailing direction or whatever the case is, But when you start getting in like ridge systems and like little bowls and stuff like that, man, it's just throw it all out the window almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you'll get in there and it feels good, and then give it 2 minutes and it'll be hitting you in the back of the head. It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, it is. It makes it real tough to play like any type of wind switch too, like because this is how I killed the deer I killed in Iowa, where it's like I went in on the wrong wind because it was the right wind for access, because I needed like a certain wind for access. And it was stupid lucky that I got this wind. I actually kicked this buck up out of a bed like in this area the day before. So it was kind of like a bump and dump. And I wasn't seeing deer till later in the day. And so I didn't go in until like 2:00 or something like that. And it was like the last day of being in Iowa. And I had the right wind to walk in for access to where it's like I wouldn't be walking through where where deer would be bedded, because I didn't want to blow a bunch of deer out or whatever.
Right.
But so if I walked in early enough, like I could catch the right wind to give me, it was actually really easy access too, but really clean access. And then, but if the deer showed up that I wanted to shoot, too early, I was screwed, because my wind was basically just switching like the entire day. And finally at like closing time, like the wind would get just right. You know what I mean? To where it's like, if he comes in the same way I saw him yesterday, he's going to basically walk the wind in his face, and I'm just going to be off of him by like, he'll have like 10 yards. I'll have 10 yards grace. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And then you gotta get your shot off, or he's going to bust you. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way I set up was like along the edge of this pretty steep draw. So I was getting, as the sun was going down too, it's like the thermal started sucking my wind down over that draw. So it was helping me cheat it just a little bit too. And sure enough, he walked in like, whatever, I think like closing time, like dark that time of year out there was like 5:00. And I think I shot him like 4:30 or something like that.
Right.
So it was like, in the wind just finished switching at like 4, it was like, I was sitting on eggshells for a couple hours, man. But like, yeah, but it never works out like that. It's always kind of a crapshoot.
Yeah, it is. It's tough, but you just gotta take the chance and roll with it.
That's it, man. No risk it, no biscuit. You
Yeah.
know what they say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So man, when you're locating, so this one, you know, you kind of had a beat on a little bit. Well, the other thing I was going to say is like, and I'm familiar with this, you know, idea, but like how cool is it when you got like a good hunting buddy like Jake, where it's like you guys share information and stuff, you know what I mean? Where it's like you both are invested in each other's success. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that doesn't happen often. And I always tell people, you know, it's like, man, a good hunting buddy's worth their weight in gold, dude, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, I love hearing when guys are helping each other out that are, you know, that whether they hunt together or not, that they're just like, they want to see the other guy succeed when they're hunting close to, you know, same areas or general areas or whatever. So I got a couple buddies in that big piece that I hunt with. We don't hunt together necessarily, but we pull all of our trail camera data. We talk to each other when we see stuff, you know what I mean? And we let each other know what deer are doing what in what areas. And when one of us kills a deer in that area, like we're pumped for the other one, you know?
Yeah.
So
I told him, I said, you know, I'm waiting on the phone call every day. So I'm coming across the road and helping you drag that big thing out of there if you get him. So, unfortunately, I didn't get it this year. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, maybe this year, man. Maybe we make the call this year.
Oh,
you
there's
know?
no doubt in my mind. Yeah. Jake's way too good of a hunter to not get it done.
Yeah,
it's been
that's
tough
for sure.
here. It's been tough here, and
well, you guys had a bunch of EHD and stuff, right? Like you had a bunch of dead deer and stuff.
Yeah, the last 2 years have really tested my will to be out there. So, I mean, you know, I'm going 12, 15 sets without seeing a single deer, and it's, you know, it's tough business. But
yeah,
you know, I seem to always turn up one or two good ones at least. So, and I'm stubborn. I'm too stubborn to go actually find deer, to come up to the farm country and hunt. Like I'm just stubborn. I like hunting nails, and that's where I'm going to stay, I guess. So.
Yeah. So I'm curious, man. That was one of the things I wanted to ask because, you know, for me, I like tough hunts and hunting places that are challenging for a couple of reasons. One, you know, a lot of times I find really good deer in those places just because it usually holds less people, you know, and so it's like I like that aspect of it. There's another aspect of it that I like, that it's just more demanding of me mentally, more demanding of me physically, more demanding of me emotionally. Like I feel like it makes me a better hunter, but I feel like in the process, it actually makes me a better person at the same time.
Absolutely.
To kind of forcefully or voluntarily go through those things, you know? Yeah. So I'm curious for you, you know, what's the draw to the hard hunt, right? Cause like I got family back toward Pittsburgh. I could go hop on like my father-in-law's farm if I want to, or my dad's, you know, 60 if I want to, and hunt deer that I can name and you know what I mean? Yeah. Whatever, but it just doesn't appeal. It's like, I'd rather go beat my brains in.
Yeah. You know, I have a hard time finding commonalities with people when it comes to deer hunting, because it seems like everybody's trying to find an easier way to make it happen. And I'm trying to make it as hard as possible myself. You know, I think it's just the whole feeling you get from overcoming, you know, when you stack the odds against yourself and then overcoming the odds. I mean, there's just no better reward in the world. And like you said, it's, you know, it definitely makes me a better person. You know, putting in that amount of effort and committing myself to something like that, and you know, trying to balance that with home and family life. I'm getting better at it. It's pretty tough, but no, I love to you know, tell me I can't do it. I'm gonna show you I can. So you know, that's been my mentality pretty much my whole life. But that's kind of a game I play with myself, I guess. You know, I tell myself, you know, this is going to be a tall task for you to overcome, but you know, watch me do it. So
yeah. For me, it's like, I don't know. There's something enduring the hardships for me is like something that I just, it appeals to me in a way that I don't know that I have a hard time explaining. You know, it also almost makes me feel closer to the process. Yeah. Like when it's harder, you know, because I picked up a stick bow this year, and that's the plan, is to use that. And someone was asking me about it, you know, it's like, you're trying to make it harder. I'm like, dude, I don't need to make deer hunting any harder. You know, it's like, that's not the goal. You know, I was like, the goal was, to, make it more intimate, make it more like getting myself like a step closer to the animal, that then, one step closer,
that makes a
not
lot of
just,
sense.
not just physically, but like the separation between me and the animal, like remove some of the mechanics between us, that was one thing I love about hunting Kansas is like, can't use trail cameras or anything out there. So it's me watching what the deer are doing, finding them, and then figuring out how I'm going to go kill it. And then I got to get close and I'm going to be, and it's going to happen on the ground. It's like, that's the appeal to me. It's like that intimacy of beating them at their game on their level. That's like the thing that I love. And for me, that's why I like the hard hunts. It sounds like we're cut from similar cloth in that regard.
I really like to hunt deer on their terms without any sort of human manipulation, I guess you would say. Just mano a mano, me versus him, and I'm on his home court. So
what I love about it is like we're at a disadvantage all the time.
Yeah,
we're living in their world, at that time, which is the part that just is super cool. That's why for me, it's like, even whenever you have like a really good encounter with a good buck, that to me is just, I don't know, I count it as a win. Cause I'm like, man, everything is stacked against me essentially. Like they see better, they smell better than me. They sense better than me. They know their surroundings better than me. Like, I only know, even if I feel like I know a lot about a deer, I always say like, I still know like 5% of what he does of his life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, how lucky am I that I get to spend 2 minutes with a mature deer in his environment, watching him do what he does. Yeah. Like, I mean, doesn't get any better than that.
Right. I agree. It's awesome. It's tough to get those opportunities, but when you do, it's all worth it.
Yeah. You got me fired up now, dude.
Yeah.
So speaking of time management, man, that was one thing I wanted to talk to you about because, I read, I was checking out some of your Instagram stuff and, I've talked a fair amount about, this past like year or so, just, my timing has changed a little bit and some of it's self-imposed because I have some other interests outside of hunting that I pursue that take up my time. But what I've actually found is it's made me a better hunter because it's actually made me, when I do get time to go into the woods, whether it's to scout or hunt, I'm way more focused and, way more present, because I don't take it as much for granted maybe as I have in the past. And it's just made me way more efficient because I had to be,
Right.
And so I'm just curious for you, man, because I knew we were talking a little bit, before we started recording just about what that balance kind of looks like. But, how are you kind of managing your time and, still trying to get the same results or the same experiences, even though you might have less time, to put into it?
Well, I'm not doing a very good job at it. So, let's see, I shot that buck October 23rd this year. So before that, I had a lot of time. Then I started coaching middle school girls basketball, and I went from having a lot of time to almost zero time.
Zero time, yeah. Do you know Chad Sylvester? Do you know Chad at all?
I know who he is, but I don't know him personally. Yeah.
All right, because it's a very similar story. I was so we usually go to Kansas together. We travel together in the fall, and this year I was going back to Kansas, and he was potentially going to go with me, and then he had to not because he ended up he got volunteered to coach both his son and his daughter's basketball teams this fall, of which their season basically ran right through like the rut, like basically like end of October through like November.
Yeah. Yeah. Our basketball season was, I think, started October 27th and Valentine's Day, February 14th was our last game in the tournament. Nice. So there's 3 months of every evening. So,
right. Yeah.
But no, I mean, my wife's a big planner, so she pretty much lays the schedule out and is like, okay, so this day we got to take our daughter here, or we got to do this, we got to do that. And so there's usually like a couple days a week I can squeeze a hunt in there. Mm-hmm. One thing I tried to do this year was maybe try to do some more morning hunts than I normally would. just to, because I had basketball practice every evening. So any day that I could get off work and hunt a morning, I would. Just trying, I'm not a very good morning hunter. But it's when I had time, so I could go figure it out, right? But I think this season, I'm gonna kind of stay a little closer to home hunting. I'm definitely gonna stay in some of the hill country stuff, but not the stuff quite as far away. And then I've scouted a lot of the farm country up here. And I've got a bunch of pins dropped on them, and I've never hunted them though. I mean, so I think this year I'm gonna try to focus on hunting some of the smaller farm country pieces. Had a lot of nice bucks on them in the past, so like I said, I just like the solitude of the hills and beating myself to death down there. So, but I think to be more efficient with the time I have, I'm going to have to spend more time close to the house hunting some of the farm country stuff.
Right. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, man. It's like sometimes you just gotta make some changes. You got to change some things up. That was one thing I started doing. I'm a little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it's like I'm starting to get more time. My daughter's a little,
Right.
in high school, and the only sport she does horseback riding and stuff like that, but her mom takes her to that. And then she does jujitsu. And so she just rides with me when I go to jujitsu.
Nice.
So we do that together. So I'm on the opposite end, where it's like I'm starting to get a little bit more time. So this year it's, I'm going to the further spot this year.
Right.
It's like a couple hour drive, and but what I did a lot of was mornings, like you were talking about. It's like I would dip out in the morning before work, and go hunting. And I would usually try to do it in the middle of the week, because there'd just be fewer people. And if I did have a bead on like a deer, then I could typically, get a hunt in with things being undisturbed for the most part. Try to go on like a Tuesday through Thursday type of thing, because Monday things will start calming down, and then by Tuesday they're back to kind of like their normal pattern from being pushed around on the weekends and stuff like that. So I started kind of playing a little bit of that game. But when you're locating deer or locating a buck, like how are you using trail cameras to do that? Are you more so basing it on a visual, like you see a deer, and that's how you kind of approach it?
No, because in the hill country you don't see deer, so it's you know what I mean.
If you see him, you should be shooting him, right?
Yeah, So it's hard to, you can glass some deer in the hill country, but it's not very common. So I'm running cameras on community scrapes mostly, a lot of scrape cams, so to get inventory of bucks. I would say, a good 70% of my cams are on scrapes. So community scrapes, sub scrapes,
Yeah.
Do
you use that intel like during the course of the year, or do you more so use it like a long-term play, like use the long-term year-over-year data?
I'll use it throughout the course of the year, definitely. I mean, there's some drainages I've been in, and they'll have multiple hub scrapes in them, depending on the size of the drainage. And, if I got 3 cameras on 3 different hub scrapes, then I can kind of, if the same buck is hitting those based on, different winds and that sort of thing, I can kind of figure out where he's bedded and that sort of thing off of which scrape he's hitting on which day. So,
right.
Because like I said, bedding's usually wind based in the hill country. So, if he's hitting a hub scrape down further, to the south, and I know bedding's on the north side, then, he's probably hitting that one on a south wind. So, so he's probably bedded up on that north face. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What, you mentioned, the rut, but I'm curious what your favorite time of year is to kill a buck. Is it the rut, or is there a different time of year you prefer? Because talking to Jake, it's funny, like talking to Jake, like I know he likes the late season, and I'm like, you're crazy, man. I hate the late season.
I don't like it either. No, the only reason I don't like late season is because of there's no cover. I can't,
Yeah.
it's hard to get in without being detected because there's nowhere to hide.
Yeah.
My favorite time to be in the woods hunting is probably from October 15th to the 25th in that time
Mm.
frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my favorite time. Like there's a couple community scrapes that I've kind of located over the past couple years, that it's just, I don't know, there's something about them where they turn on like around the 15th through the 20th, like
Yeah.
just consistently. I've watched it, the past couple years. Some of it's food based, which I learned the hard way one year that I focused on one, and I thought it was an early doe in one area, and then the food dried up the following year, and it was just like a ghost town. There were still deer in the area, but just not the same. It wasn't the same. And it was one year had a real good acorn drop, the next year didn't, right? And so it was all relative to that. And this is a piece that's local to me. This wasn't on the Big Woods piece. And then there's another spot where I killed my deer this year. It's like, man, like clockwork, it goes off on a specific date. As long as I get the right wind on like a specific date and I'm in there, it's like I'm going to have an encounter with one of the deer I want to shoot in that piece. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. I have spots exactly like that,
Yeah, I can set my watch to it. You know what I mean? And that one is early doe. Like I saw the fawn drop, 2 years ago, and there's doe bedding that's adjacent to it, and so that doe family has the estrostate, and so as long as they don't move on, like it's going to be good.
I think I like that time frame because, we're starting to, usually about that time we're starting to get some cold fronts and stuff, and you're still targeting a bed to food pattern on the deer, so they're just maybe moving a little further out of their beds when you get them cold fronts. Because typically in Ohio, we don't see a ton of hunting pressure until late October, early November. I mean, it's pretty mild, really, the hunting pressure is. So this year, it was almost a ghost town. So I don't know if that's because of EHD and people just weren't having any success, and maybe they moved on to different areas and that sort of thing. But there were a few people hunting, but not like most years.
Right.
But yeah, October's pretty much free reign. I mean, I don't ever run into anybody in October.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll give you some of mine. I'll give you some of my people over here.
Yeah. I see plenty of Pennsylvania plates in November.
Yeah. Man, it's just, at least locally for me, it's like I've just noticed year over year, the past several years, it's ramped up where, in places where I would never see a person, like I'm seeing, there was one spot I went to last year. It was like I got the right wind. I was like, man, I'm going to slip into this spot. And it's also a place where I'm like, I never see people, never get people on camera. I'm like, get in there. I was sitting there for, I don't know what it was, like an hour, and like had a dude walk in. Actually, it wasn't this year. It was the year before. I had a dude walk in like 15 yards from me. And
Really?
I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, dude, I've never seen, I was like, I can't believe this. It's like a guy, he was actually walking the wrong way with the wind to his back, still hunting through brush, just making noise. I heard him from like 150 yards away coming, what I mean? And I could actually smell his fabric softener before he got to me. You know what I mean? Like, and I was like, oh man, I was like, this is bad news. It's like this, I was like, we're pretty much done for the day, but, so man, what's your plans for 2024, man? What you got going on? You hunt in Ohio and then you going anywhere else?
I think I don't have any big plans right now. My focus is just Ohio. Try to kill a buck in Ohio. Like I said, with my daughter's sports and that sort of thing. Like I want to be here for her. As it goes by quick. So I don't want to miss any of it. So, so I'm probably just going to focus on Ohio. I might go to Kentucky.
You killed a velvet hammer down there, didn't you, a couple years ago?
Yeah. I had a little 70-acre lease down there. And he happened to be living on that lease. So, I killed him. I think it was on my birthday, actually, 9/11. So
there you go. That's a good birthday present right there.
Yeah, he was I think he green scored 158 inch as an 8-point. So he was a stud. I didn't think he was that big when I shot him, but yeah, he's a nice one. But yeah, I went down there and hunted public last September and got my butt kicked. It was hot, it was pushing 100 every day. No previous scouting, diving into big woods, trying to figure it out in a short period of time. Yeah, I got my butt kicked.
Yeah, that's a big pill to swallow there.
Yeah. So I might take a short trip down there during the rut or something this season if I can get it done in Ohio. But Ohio's my main focus right now.
Nice. And then did your daughter kill a deer last year too?
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, it was a funky rack deer, right?
Yeah.
That was a cool buck.
Yeah, it was a nice 3-year-old. That's her first actual racked buck. She killed a button buck the season before with a crossbow, and then she got this one with the 350. But
nice.
yeah, it was kind of cool. She was excited. He actually came off some public property, and we had two does out in the field, and I'm just trying to get her a deer because she has limited time she can go because all the sports and stuff she does, And I was like, you can take one of those does if you want to. She was like, I kind of want to wait on a buck. So,
there you go.
I wanted her to shoot a deer because I'm like, we need meat in the freezer, you know what I mean?
Right.
And she's like, I'm going to pass on him. I'm like, gosh, dang it. We're running out of time. We're probably not going to see anything else. And then, right before daylight, he popped out of the woods and with his nose on the ground looking for a doe. 40 yards, she made a great shot on him. So that was exciting. Yeah. I think he had 15 points is what he had.
Did he really?
With that goofy side on him. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a proud dad moment right there, dude. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. I was for sure.
Nice, man. Well, man, I hope you kill a hammer this year. I hope you get to Kentucky and kill a hammer. I hope your daughter kills another hammer. I just hope you have all kinds of, there you go. Awesome, man. Well, hey, buddy, I want to be sensitive to your time. I know you got a lot of stuff going on. I appreciate you jumping on here with me. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to make people aware of, whether it's hunting related or not, let them know where they can find out more about you and get in touch with you if they'd like to?
Yeah, not really. If anyone wants to contact me, I'm on Instagram at Cody_Schleich. Facebook is Cody Schleich. I'm not real active on social media. Every once in a while I'll put something out there, but yeah, feel free to get a hold of me. I love talking deer hunting with people. So, if someone wants to cut it up with me, I'd be more than happy to. So,
awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, and it's good talking with you.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on. You got an open invite, buddy. Anytime you want to come on, I'm always down to talk to good people, man.
Yeah. Yep, I appreciate it. Shoot me a text and let me know how your season's going. Any updates you got, let me know.
Awesome, man. Same to you, buddy. I appreciate you.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast, and hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. And before I shut this thing down, we need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Osseo Gear, Tethered, Exodus Outdoor Gear, and Genesee Beer. And until next time, we'll see y'all.